am the curator of the MacLaren's exhibition this fall called Michael Forster, Perpetual Emergence. And it's my pleasure to show you some of the more intimate works that will be featured in the exhibition. They are finished painted studies and sketches and drawings. The MacLaren has a collection of over 2,000 works on paper of this nature, and so I've put my eyes on all of them and distilled it to about 20 that will be featured this fall, alongside a collection of paintings that the MacLaren received as a gift in 1999, along with paintings that have been loaned from the Lock Gallery in Toronto. So let's take a closer look at some of the painted studies that are in this book. The dates range from the 1930s until the 1990s in our drawings collection, but the exhibition is going to focus on the earlier drawings from the 40s and 50s, because this was a period in which Michael Forster was experimenting with surrealism. So I'll just sort of show you a few works that I think show a nice cross-section of the different ways he was experimenting with media and with abstraction and surrealism, keeping in mind the kind of paragon genres of landscape and figurative painting. The title of the exhibition is Perpetual Emergence, and so in each work we're trying to investigate how things kind of come to the surface no matter what medium Michael Forster is using. And I think this drawing is this painted study and drawing shows is a great example of how depth is achieved even in an abstract kind of surrealist composition. And this is achieved with especially through these lines that emerge from a point that looks to be deeper in the picture plane, and as they spread out we understand a kind of a plunge into space and a kind of emergence, a kind of push forward. And the different kind of swirls of color I think remind us of weather patterns or cloud formations, and that's a theme that comes up quite a bit in Michael Forster's work. I think he's really interested in atmospheric conditions and the way celestial bodies and changes in weather can communicate kind of bigger things about the human condition. I think these painted studies on a really small scale are great examples of Michael Forster's experimentation with different media. We analyzed the different components for each of these works and found, a whole laundry list of different kinds of pigments, from pen and ink to brush and ink to acrylic to oil to wax crayon, felt tip marker. He's kind of bringing it all in and seeing how each material interacts with the others. So here you can see a big blob of white, what I think is white acrylic paint, intermingled with very fine pen and ink lines, and this kind of really interesting wave pattern created by liquid inks of different thicknesses that kind of create these rivulets of color that are so appealing. This work is a great example of a sort of surrealism that we can recognize from the masterpieces of surrealism that many people know, like Dali's Persistence of Memory, or works by Magritte that use a kind of dreamscape or a world that doesn't exist in our own experience but exists more in our memories or our dreams. In this work we have a clear division of space. There's a horizon line, which we didn't see in the earlier pieces, and these kind of drippy figures that are connected with strange lines, and we kind of get an idea of a moon or a sun and a kind of atmosphere, but we can't quite locate this in our own experience, except maybe in dreams. So this is part of Michael Forster's investigation into the kind of big concepts of surrealism. The next one is similar. Yeah. There's even less there's no horizon line here. There's even less grounding in a kind of a theater set or an imagined place. This kind of all seems to exist in an ether, and you get the sense that these are kind of maybe organisms sort of floating in something. These ones sit as an anomaly compared to some of the more abstract, figurative and landscape works. This work appears at first to be an abstract kind of experiment, but when you look closer, these sort of concentric grids really bring you into a further space inside the picture, and you get these sort of nebulous, gravitational feelings that kind of draw your eye through the picture, and I think it makes it a really kind of intriguing composition. One of the elements that recurs in this drawings collection that is of particular interest and is really unique are works that are done using magazine pages. So this is a kind of glossy paper that's been ripped out of a magazine. Michael Forster used cotton balls or razor blades to apply acetone to the surface of these magazine pages and kind of redistribute the color, and then sometimes would use ink, pen and ink, or brush and ink on top to kind of reorder an existing design framework and then superimpose his own ideas on top. This is a really unique approach. I've never seen this before, and it's intriguing, and the results are fascinating. When you look closely here, the only pigment that he seems to have used is black, but all of this pink and orange and bits of green have been lifted out of a magazine page. In some cases, the back of the magazine has, if you remove these from the book, you can see what, an article or photos on the back of the page. Many of these were made in the 60s and 70s. Michael Forster was living in Mexico for a long time, for 10 or 11 years during that period, and acetone was a kind of readily available medium, and so his experimentation is connected to his period in Mexico. I selected this one for exhibition because it is such a great example of Michael Forster's experimentation with this medium of using a magazine page and kind of reordering what's already there and superimposing his own new imagery. I think you get this really luminous quality that comes from the inks that have been kind of redistributed. Some parts are left, some parts he's worked down all the way almost to white here, so you're getting right at the sort of pulp of the magazine page, and some parts are left glossy, so you get this amazing kind of variance of the surface. And I think that ties in also to the idea of emergence. When you look at the surface of the work, you can see different layers and how they kind of are linked together. Michael Forster was born in 1907 and died in 2002, and these were given to us in 1997, so before his death. The paintings were given shortly thereafter in recognition of the fact that the MacLaren had positioned itself as an authority on Michael Forster's career, given that we were holding the largest collection of drawings and works on paper in private hands. Michael Forster is an intriguing artist for many reasons, but one of the most relevant ones is that because he moved around so much during his life, he never got adopted by a national school or a kind of group or a movement. He was born in Calcutta to English parents who were stationed under the Raj. His parents both died under traumatizing circumstances, and he was sent to England for his schooling. He then, the Depression was about to hit, and he moved to Canada looking for better opportunities. He settled in Toronto very briefly, but found the conditions to be no better than in England. He moved out to the prairies and found work on a farm. He spent a bit of time in Hollywood as a set designer, moved his way back into Canada, and was recruited as a war artist, and so was stationed in France and in England as an official war artist for Canada. That was in 44 to 46. He returned to Canada. He married a woman, a Canadian, in Ottawa. They moved to the British West Indies for a few years. They came back. He became an art critic for The Standard, which is an English language newspaper in Montreal that folded shortly after he left. He and his wife moved to Mexico for 10 years, where he got a solo show at the National Modern Art Museum in Mexico City. He was at the height of his reputation in Mexico City, and he returned to Canada, lived in Burlington for 10 years. His wife died of cancer in 1975, and he moved back to England, which was viewed, I think, as a sort of cultural homecoming for him because he had spent some formative years in England. His sister had recently been widowed, so he moved to Cornwall to be with her, and stayed there for the remainder of his life until 2002. This work I found really fascinating, so it was immediately slated for inclusion in the exhibition because of its sculptural quality and its again, this kind of dive into space. I don't know of any sculptural work that he ever did. If he did maquettes or made sculpture, it hasn't survived, and nor has it made it into any of the literature written about Michael Forster. The drawings and finished painted studies from the 40s are unique because they're so connected with the surrealist experimentations that were going on in that moment. Most of his work in the later years, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, is much more, much denser. He does remain connected to landscape and figurative conventions, and many of his works, even when they look abstract at first, you can discern a landscape element or figurative elements, but his drawings and paintings are dense to the edges and very full, whereas the surrealist works have a spatial recession and a kind of emptiness at times. A lot of his surrealist drawings I find particularly interesting because they don't fit with the kind of surrealism that we know today, which is sort of at many times playful and imaginative and thinking about dreams and fantasies. Michael Forster's work is a little more closely connected with nightmares. And some of his works, you can see kind of skeletal creatures that are, falling apart or outgrowing their space, or kind of everything's out of scale. There are, barren landscapes and boulders and kind of nightmarish quality that that is really interesting and doesn't really fit with some of the more playful approaches to surrealism that have lasted in the communal kind of memory of the Western art of that period. So now that you've had a sneak peek at the drawings collection, I know that you'd like to come and see the paintings that will accompany these drawings. The MacLaren is so pleased to be showing an exhibition of paintings and drawings by Michael Forster this fall. It opens September 7th with an opening reception on September 12th, and it runs through till October 27th. So please be sure to come and check it out.